Celeste is the 5th hero added to Deadlock in the major update, and she's an acrobatic and spirit-focused character who, literally breaks the laws of physics. So, she is very fun and very powerful, and today I want to show you all of the tricks and abilities she has up her sleeve, because she can do some really cool things. So, let's get started by talking about how, yeah, she kind of makes Isaac Newton upset. So, gravity just doesn't really have much of an effect on this character. For some strange reason, she just, kind of has an anti-gravity effect going on. She can jump higher, she just kind of floats through the air, and she has greatly increased air controls. So, physics? What's that? Nah, she just has a totally different gravity multiplier compared to every other character in the game. And it's actually super fun. I really love this. It allows you to manipulate the stamina system in ways that we previously haven't seen. Because, well, nobody else in this game has this sort of passive effect to them. And so if you know how to use wall jumps, double jumps, air dashes, and the like to your advantage, then she is one of the slipperiest characters in the entire game. As you can see, she also has 4 stamina bars by default, which is just perfect. It really synergizes well with her abilities to dance and dart through the air, and yeah, every time she does a dash or a slide or anything like that, she does it fabulously. She's so spectacular. Wow. And yeah, look at the air strafing and stuff you can pull off. I mean, she just feels incredible to maneuver with. Let's take a look at her stats now. So she actually has quite a lot of health for the early game, 750 to start off with. However, she doesn't ramp up as high as a character like a Venator, ending off at about 1975 health at the end of the game. Still, pretty good health stats. Her weapon also does pretty low DPS, starting out at 48 DPS and maxing out all the way to 71 DPS, and you'll notice that she also has minus 25% crit bonus scale. This means that her headshot multiplier for her weapon is 25% weaker, and that's because her weapon is one of the most unique in all of Deadlock. It is a very slow arcing projectile that almost seems to kind of magnetize to the head. Even if I aim at his chest here, I'm still hitting headshots on him, so that's why she has that minus crit bonus scale, because, well, yeah, it's really easy to hit headshots. And it also will bounce off of other surfaces, and so you can actually fling them at the enemies by hitting on the floor. And if they're close enough to an enemy, they'll actually kind of automatically bounce to them, kind of curving just like that. But it's very limited in its effect, so if you aim past the enemies, you won't actually be able to have that magnetism in effect. And sometimes I've noticed, even if you do kind of land in the general vicinity, it still be a little finicky. So it is still a really cool effect, and you can also just rebound it off the wall like that and hit enemies that way too. And once again, it will kind of try to, bounce to the enemy like that if the trajectory makes sense. So it'll bounce like that, and then it'll kind of lock onto the target like that. But if I aim too far away, the angle isn't correct, then it's not going to auto-lock onto the enemies. This weapon also has no damage drop-off, so we are still doing the same damage at this range, but you can really start to see how slow these projectiles are. If you actually manage to hit someone at this range, you deserve to have your damage. That's what Valve has decided, and frankly, I agree, because yeah, you have to arc to it, and it's just so slow. If an enemy's moving over there, you're basically just gambling whether you actually hit them or not. One last thing to note about her weapon is that it will actually bounce to other enemies if they are in range, just like this. She has an inherent ricochet. However, it is only a partial ricochet, as they have to be pretty much directly behind each other like this. So if you shoot from an angle that is more perpendicular to the enemies, it won't ricochet. So it's basically like carrying the momentum forward. Your bullets can't curve too much is basically the idea here. So it is still a very nice touch, and if you're able to get the enemies lined up in a row, that's great. And if you're farming a jungle camp, then you'll want to make sure to target it like this, rather than like this, because you'll be losing out on damage if you aren't lining it up properly. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, can't this weapon be a lot more consistent and reliable with split shot? Well, About that, Valve has decided that either it is too strong or potentially too buggy to use Split Shot with this character. Which one is actually the correct answer? We don't know, because we can't use it. But yeah, Split Shot is just straight up grayed out. You can't buy it on her. Real quick before we move on to her abilities, I just want to show you her melee animations because, I don't know, they're kind of cool. Wouldn't be fitting to showcase a character without that, so that's light melee, but the heavy melee is much more interesting because, yeah, she kind of just stabs you with her unicorn horn. Glows with power. I think it's a nice touch. And then here's her parry. Not as exciting, but still pretty cool. Now for her first ability, and this has such an edgy name compared to everything else in her kit. The Light Eater. Ooh. Yeah. I don't know, sounds like an ability Graves would have, but regardless, this is a very powerful ability. It's kind of her bread and butter for dealing damage. It has a 20-second cooldown, and it allows her to blast enemies in a cone in front of her with a flare of light. Enemies take spirit damage when attacked by Celeste, and it provides her with some spirit lifesteal. So, if I throw this out at the target, it has a short wind-up, and then it blasts a cone in front of her, and now all my attacks do bonus spirit damage, just like this. It is a hefty spirit amp, not too dissimilar to Love Bites, actually, from Mina, and it hits very hard. Both of these have spirit scaling, the initial impact and the on-bullet hit, and the spirit scaling might not seem that strong, but it does actually still ramp up pretty well, all things considered. The debuff lasts for 12 seconds, so this enemy for the next 12 seconds will be affected by this spirit damage, and I will also be life-stealing from him when I hit him with my primary fire, just like this. And it is a per-target basis, so if I summon an Infernus over here, and then I only hit this test dummy, I'm not going to be spirit life-stealing or doing damage to this Infernus. The first upgrade is honestly kind of broken. Minus 10 seconds of cooldown. Shave the cooldown in half. And now, you have a 10-second cooldown on an ability that lasts for 12 seconds. So yeah, 100% uptime on the enemy who is affected by it, as long as you're in range to apply it consistently. And she is a very close quarters character because of how slow these projectiles are and how short range this is, so you'll want to keep up the chase. But that is very powerful indeed, and that low cooldown also makes this great for farming camps because you can feel free to use it without worrying about wasting it. The second upgrade gives it 3 meters of cast range and 15% additional spirit lifesteal, so now you'll be lifestealing 35% from the target, and it will be considerably easier to hit them with this initial blast. As you can see here, much bigger range, really great for quality of life. The final upgrade adds 25 damage and increased spirit scaling. Not to the flat flare damage, but to the on-bullet hit. Take a look at this. We go from 34 damage and 0.23 spirit scaling up to 67 damage and 0.43 scaling. This turns her weapon into a powerhouse against the affected targets, and yeah, it's just a really strong upgrade, no way around it. Now the enemies can debuff remove it, so if I hit him with this, and then take control, by myself dispel magic, and then cleanse, the Light Eater effect is gone, so that is a way to counterplay her, and she won't be getting that spirit damage anymore. However, it is still just a really good ability, and a really pretty ability too. Those particle effects look great. And it's not too bad to play against either. It is very flashy, but the effects disappear almost as quick as they appear, so yeah, it's pretty nice. I guess I just felt compelled to point that out because I guess I'm the visual clarity guy now. Her second ability is Dazzling Trick, and this is her defensive ability. It has a 35-second cooldown, and it gives her a protective barrier similar to what Warden has. It gives 1 meter per second of bonus move speed, and it has 120 health by default with 1.1 spirit scaling. And the buff will last for 4 seconds, but here's the catch. If the enemies destroy the barrier will explode. It'll deal 50% of the barrier's health as damage, and it'll silence enemies in 15-meter range around her for 1.75 seconds, which is quite good. So if I go ahead and pop this barrier here, you can see it, and it has some stunning visual effects. I love this. It is so gorgeous. So if I pop the barrier and then pop it Infernus and have him shoot me, It explodes, he takes 82 damage, and then is silenced. So, pretty straightforward, and it is a pretty short radius around her too. Only 15 meters area of effect, so only slightly larger than the Light Eater's radius out here. So just, if you're going to pop the barrier, don't stay near Celeste, try and distance yourself from her, or have Dispel Magic or some other cleanse at the ready. The first upgrade gives her an extra 2.5 meters per second of movement speed, bringing the total up to 3.5, allowing her to, well, yeah, remain in range, so she can silence the enemies. Although, do be warned that if it expires without being destroyed, it won't actually explode, as you saw there. The second upgrade is very powerful. It adds 100 extra health to the barrier and increases the spirit scaling from 1.1 up to 1.8. All of a sudden now, you've got a lot of health from this ability. The third upgrade increases the silence duration by 2 seconds and shaves 18 seconds off the cooldown, cutting it in half. And it'll also allow Shining Wonder to bounce, which is her ultimate, and we'll talk about that later. But with this upgrade, you all of a sudden have a lot more uptime on the barrier, which is really nice, and considering the spirit scaling upgrade from before, if you have a lot of spirit power from something like Bound the Spirit, then you're looking at hundreds of extra HP. Her third ability is Radiant Daggers, which calls down a beam of light from the sky. After a short duration, the beam will fully form, causing an explosion that deals spirit damage to all targets in the area. Celeste will receive a stacking buff that increases her spirit damage anytime this hits an enemy hero. You get 8% spirit amp per stack and a max of 6 stacks. It does 128 damage and it has a very large explosion radius. When I first read this, I was visualizing something similar to, what's her name? Is it Juno who has the beam in Overwatch? Something like that? Just this really massive, annoying beam? But it's not like that at all. Check this out. So, it calls down these spikes, and then it explodes 1.6 or 1.4 seconds later. So, call it down, then it explodes, and it grants this stacking buff. And, well, if you're good at math, then I'm sure you've realized by now that this is utterly broken if you get max stacks. 8 times 6, that's 48% extra spirit damage! What do you mean? And because this is a spirit amp that Celeste gets herself, it actually ends up stacking multiplicatively with escalating exposure, because it applies a different spirit amp that is a debuff to the enemies. So there is a great synergy between these two items, and any other form of spirit shred that you can get. So if Celeste is allowed to reach max stacks, she's almost unstoppable in terms of the amount of spirit damage that she does. However, it is actually very difficult to reach max stacks from my testing in a game, because this doesn't slow the enemies or do anything to prevent them from leaving the radius. So it is very easy to escape this and not be affected by it in the slightest, especially if Celeste isn't smart with where she places it. So you're going to have to try and predict enemy movements and have them run into it rather than run away from it, or use crowd control effects, like, for example, a cold front or a knockdown or something like that, to keep them in the radius, or synergize with your team. Have Abrams pin someone into a wall and then cast this on them, and that'll work a lot better, and then you'll be able to do a ridiculous amount of damage. Just Light Eater alone goes from 105 up to 169 damage, 118 up to 204 per shot. This thing is intense. This ability is charged, and the first upgrade just gives you 2 extra charges. Who needs rapid recharge? We have that in base kit, and it's a 2-second internal cooldown between charges, so you can throw one out, and then throw another out, and if a dynamo on your team happens to be ulting, then congratulations, enjoy your free stacks, you now have a 48% damage amp. Hooray! The second upgrade shaves 12 seconds off the cooldown, making it much easier to get all your stacks back. And this is good, because the cooldown for each stack decrements one after the other. They do not decrement simultaneously, just like every other charged ability in the game, obviously. So, yeah. You can spam your daggers out extremely quickly, but they do kind of take forever to come back online. And it also adds 60 impact damage, so it does a decent amount of damage. 202 is okay. It's still not really a huge damage tool at the end of the day, but it's still non-negligible. As if 8% Spirit Amp wasn't enough. We now get plus 3% Spirit Amp and plus 6% fire rate per stack. Yeah, sure, why not? At max stacks, she can have 66% extra spirit damage. Yeah, that's a little strong. But again, in actual gameplay, it is a lot harder, at least from my initial experience, to get 6 stacks online. But even right now, I've got 55% damage amp. Yeah, this does a lot of damage. This is kind of a little strong. And there is a good chance it gets nerfed, even though, yeah, it is still pretty hard to hit. Her final ability is Shining Wonder. This is a very strong damage ultimate, and consistently, it ends up being her highest source of damage throughout a match. So this lets her launch a deadly orb of light that deals spirit damage and applies a slow and reduces dash distance on impact. That's how Valve wrote that. They kind of forgot that commas exist. It deals spirit damage, applies slow, and reduces dash distance on impact. There, I fixed it. Sorry. Bad grammar bugs me. Anyways, the orb then bounces to the enemies within range. If no target is found, the orb will linger around the target for a short duration while continuing to look for enemies to bounce to. It prioritizes enemy heroes when picking targets, and refunds half the cooldown on a miss. This ability does 115 damage by default with 0.6 spirit scaling, but that's just one instance of damage, and this thing bounces 8 times, so the actual damage you get per ult quickly exceeds 1,000 and can even reach multiple thousands later into the game. It slows enemies down by 40% and slows their dash distance by 25%, and the slow will linger for 1.5 seconds. So check this out. We have a little bit of a wind-up, throw the orb, and it gets to bouncing, and look at all that damage. No items, and it got this Infernus to half health. Pretty nice. It's a very good AoE ability, and this thing ramps so hard, especially if you have a damage amp from Radiant Daggers. And so now, you can see how this synergizes with the Tier 3 Dazzling trick, because it allows Shining Wonder to bounce. So, if I kill this Infernus real quick, pow, 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 cast the ultimate, there's no one to bounce to, but it'll bounce to my shield, and I personally can keep the chain going and bully an enemy in a 1v1. So this tier 3 upgrade allows her ultimate to be really, really strong against single targets too. The first upgrade to Shining Wonder drastically improves the slow, amping it to 60% movement slow and 40% dash distance. The second upgrade just adds 50 damage. That's really strong. And then the final upgrade... yeah, sure, why not? Let's just add 10 extra bounces and take 35 seconds off the cooldown. Sure. That's totally fair and balanced. So... bam, 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 bam. And then pop my own shield. Keep it going. Keep it going. Oh yeah, and only now does it expire. This thing does thousands of damage. It is very strong. But there is counterplay to it, so the enemies really just have to social distance from each other. Learn from what we had to go through in 2020 and just stay away from your team for a little bit if you have the ball on you. It'll stop looking for targets to bounce to after 4.5 seconds, and it has a 17-meter bounce range, so if you just kind of, I don't know, stay over here for a little bit, yeah, you'll be fine, and it won't be able to do any damage. You can counterspell it, but that won't cause the ball to expire. Counterspell will only prevent that one instance of damage on you, and then the ball will just bounce to somebody else. So, Counterspell is okay, but not a perfect solution. And you can't debuff remove it either. This spell magic will only remove the slow, but it won't make the ball disappear. So the ball is pretty much just forced to stay around, and that's why you gotta just carry it away from your team if you have the hot potato. So as you can see, Celeste is a highly agile hero capable of doing a ton of spirit damage, especially if she's allowed to get her amp online. But now, I want to show you a build that I've created here, day 1 for Celeste, that seems to be pretty powerful, although of course it is subject to change as I do more testing. But this is my Spirit Nuker Celeste build, and I'm pretty confident with a lot of the items in here. So, first of all, we do get high velocity rounds. This actually makes it so much easier to hit her weapon shots. You can skip it if you feel really confident, but yeah, I find it to be quite nice. We also get Mystic Regeneration and Radiant Regeneration in the build, and that's because I don't want to run into diminishing returns with the incredible amounts of lifesteal that you get from Light Eater. 35% is ludicrous. It's double what we get from Spirit lifesteal, so Spirit lifesteal just feels kind of redundant. This adds extra sustain to her in a way that won't have diminishing returns and that will scale very high with all the spirit power that we get. And since it's so easy to deal consistent spirit damage to multiple targets on her, yeah, this is pretty much just constantly giving her really good regen. Spirit power scaling is essential, and that's why we're getting improved spirit and later boundless spirit in the build, and compressed cooldown on her ultimate so you can get more of these. Cold Front is also very helpful because it allows you to slow the enemies into her abilities, and keep them in the range that you want to be at to do damage most effectively. And it also adds more spirit damage too. Healbane is essential anti-heal, you really can't play without this item. And then Stamina Mastery. Oh my god. My favorite item in the game. And they made a character who augments the stamina system with low gravity and improved air strafing. Oh my goodness. If you have not played with Stamina Mastery on this hero yet, you're missing out. It genuinely is a treat. Like, it's so much fun. So, yeah, it doesn't matter what Celeste build I am playing, I will buy Stamina Mastery at some point. It's just so nice. And, well, I said, hey, why stop at that? Let's get Kinetic Dash, too, for the gun scaling, so we can get up to our 4.8k. I can't think of a better 2k item than Kinetic Dash for her, because she has very low ammo, and so Kinetic Dash just doubles it and provides a nice fire rate boost. And then we get Spirit Rend, which is an item that I don't play too often with. And they really need to do something about this item for the sake of the UI, because it just it doesn't have a UI component. It was really hard to tell how effective this item is actually being, but I figure it's got to be doing something right, because she does a lot of damage once she gets this item online. And the reason why this is so good is because it adds just so much Spirit Shred to the character. It's a huge damage bonus against the enemies, and her weapon, like I showcased earlier, pretty much just magnetizes towards heads. You can be aiming center mass and still hit the enemies in the head with reasonable consistency. For some characters, it's a little harder than others, but regardless, it is very easy to hit headshots with this weapon if you are hitting them at all. So you can build up Spirit Rend and get a lot of Spirit Shred. And I've been hitting this dummy for a while now. If I go ahead and hit this ability, that did almost double damage right there. We really shredded his Spirit Resist. So, yeah, it's a pretty good item on this character, I think. This gets her up to the gun spike, and then after that is just pure Spirit. Now, the original default build has Torment Pulse in it, and I figured I'd try it out, and yeah, I do think I like this item. It adds a lot of extra consistent spirit damage. And since Celeste is able to keep herself in range of the enemies as long as she wants with all of this stamina that she's got, and her ability to just fly around the battlefield, this does end up doing a lot of damage. Now, it is a little bit lower on the damage hierarchy than some other heroes I've been buying Torment Pulse on lately, but it is still really convenient and really helpful, and it also helps you to proc escalating exposure on the enemies easier when you get that later. Which, by the way, escalating exposure is just bananas in conjunction with Radiant Daggers. So check this out. I'm going to max out Radiant Daggers, and I'm going to get myself some stacks. Wha-bam! That killed Infernus. Let me wait one more time, and then I want to get all 6 stacks online, just like that. And against this test dummy here, he now has 12 escalating stacks, and I've got the 6x shred, so I have 66% more spirit damage. This Light Eater does 122 damage normally. Now look at the damage. Yeah, that was a lot. And if I hit a bullet on him, normally it does 123 damage, but with this, we're doing 311. That's almost 3x damage, because we're getting a huge bonus from this, and then we're applying a huge damage debuff on this guy. And if I Spirit Shred his head here with Spirit Rend, we're going to be doing just that much more damage. So let me keep hitting this guy in the head, wait for Infernus to respawn, there's one more. And now, 347 damage from that hit. And each of my weapon shots are doing almost 400 damage. Oh my god. So, yeah, the damage multipliers escalate quickly. If you're able to hit all the Radiant Daggers anyways. Even without that, just escalating exposure and Spirit Rend alone is enough to make her hit really hard and do almost double damage. I mean, look at this. This is still really good. More than 200 damage? Yeah, that's solid. Now, the one thing that might confuse you a little bit is the lack of range in this build. I did try imbuing range on the Radiant Daggers, and the enemies were still just running away from the daggers super consistently. Now, that might just be up to skill issue, and I'm very happy to add range back into the build. And so if you play this build in a couple of days and you see the range item chucked up here again, don't be surprised. I'm still testing that out, but greater expansion can definitely still be pretty good, and if you're able to slow them in with Cold Front as you throw this out and you have this greatly improved range, yeah, it's probably a lot easier to actually hit these Radiant Daggers. But regardless, she just still does so much damage. And then the ultimate. I mean, yeah, if we just max this out, put some escalating exposure stacks on these guys, that's 740 damage on this guy. Oh my goodness, like it just... This character melts. As for the ability point order, I've decided to max the ultimate out first because it does end up being the largest damage source on this character super consistently, and so it just makes sense to amplify that as quickly as we can. Now, I do put 1 point into Light Eater for the cooldown reduction, that's just too good to ignore, 2 points into the barrier so that she can actually stay alive, and then 1 point into the third ability for the charges. Then after that, I quickly max out the first ability for the damage scaling, and then I put my second point into the Radiant Daggers, max out the Dazzling trick, and end off by maxing out the Daggers. And again, I'm prioritizing the Daggers less in this build. When I first made this build, these were the first thing that I upgraded, but I just found them to be not very consistent in my testing. Could be skill issue again, and so if the build order changes by the time you see this build, that's why. So this is still definitely up in the air, but it's what I've got for now, and regardless of anything, her ultimate is phenomenal, and you want to spam that, and so maxing it out certainly isn't a bad strategy. But with that being said, let me know what you think about Celeste in the comments section down below. I think she's a really cool character, and she is super fun to play just for the sheer sake of her movement being as glorious as it is. Just being able to fly throughout the sky and just navigate the city of New York in a way that we haven't really seen yet is just so fun. I really have loved that part about this character, honestly more than anything else, but her gameplay is also really smooth. I wasn't super hyped for this character to come out, but I am pleasantly surprised by how fluid and fun she is to play. So, with all that being said, of course, if you guys enjoyed this video and found it to be helpful, make sure to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos from me. And I will be doing a lot more Celeste testing here on the channel, so you won't want to miss out on any of that. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next time. Peace out.